Welcome to Soul Wellness with Kristen, where we get into the nitty-gritty of various holistic modalities and explore exactly how they help you heal. I'm your host, Kristen, and I invite you to join me on this enlightening expedition where we explore the connection between mind, body, and spirit. In each episode, we'll talk in depth with holistic providers, medical professionals, therapists, and healers. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge, inspire you with stories of resilience, and provide practical tools that you can integrate into your daily life. So, find a comfortable space and join us as we explore the multifaceted world of holistic wellness. Get ready to learn how to improve every aspect of your life and simply feel good. The adventure begins now. Thank you for joining us today. I have Christiane Matey back with us. She is an integrative dietitian with Mint Nutrition, and today we are going to talk about gut health. So welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a great talk. This is something I really like to talk to you about, and I've learned so much about gut health from you. So let's start with the role of the microbiome in your overall health.
Sure. Yeah. I'll back up a little because I've had gut issues my whole life. So I've spent decades trying to figure all this out and what's happening and talking to all the experts, hiring, working with doctors, yada, yada. So I feel like I have a really good handle. This is probably the corner of my niche, market that I really know about most of my patient population. So I think if we talk a little bit about more, what is the gut, how we can kind of look at the health of it and the effects of everything. And so the biome is like this ecosystem that lives with us, and it's in your gastrointestinal tract really is in the mouth, all the way to the anus is like this tube. In there, we have invaders. It's an open area. Whatever we put in comes in. So sometimes there's bad things that come in. And this biome, this ecosystem that has billions, if not trillions of bacteria, microbes that live with us, truly. Like these are part of who we are. In fact, actually, by the time you're a year old, your biome is that of an adult. So it stops growing. It stops inoculating or creating these seeds that are in the gut. So what you're exposed to as a baby, if you're vaginally birthed or if you're C-section birth, how you're born, it affects those are some of the microbes that you were first introduced to, no different than breast milk and colostrum and all those things that get into the gut to really kind of plant those seeds. So we want this great ecosystem that's going to be balanced and healthy. And when it's not, can be catastrophic for some people. It can be mild. It can be, maybe they don't even know, that they have this off shift on their biome. It's also called the second brain. And I think a lot of people don't realize when we have dysbiosis, that kind of imbalance with the gut, it really does affect the brain. We get mood disorders and anxiety and dizziness and neurological type stuff. So for every message you give, your brain gives your gut, you have 7 messages coming back. So it's so profound how you may feel like, oh, I'm going to have this big speech, or I'm going to go talk in front of a group of 1,000 people, or I don't know, I hate flying. It's not my favorite thing. So when I have to go to the airport, I'm like, nervous belly, and I have to go to the bathroom all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the one time that I'm like, I've got to go to the bathroom again, because my brain, because I'm so nervous, my body's like, get rid of everything, dump it all. And so it's no different than gut instinct. It's no different than I'm really nervous and stressed out, and you really feel it like, oh, my belly's a little wonky, or I feel like vomiting, or, you get that nervous belly. Yeah, that's all your biome. Your biome literally can understand what's happening, and it's like, oh, this is what's going on. We need to respond to that. So I'm kind of going back on how your GI tract is like this tube, and we're putting food in, but we're also touching our mouths, or we're ingesting things that aren't supposed to be there. It can create problems. So you go away to an island and you get food poisoning, or you travel and get food poisoning. You've got bad bugs that are coming in. No different than these little microbes that are in the gut. They also act like ants, so they touch each other. They're like, oh, you're good. So in a good balanced flora of what you have, they can really crowd out a lot of the bad stuff. So we all have C. diff, and we all have H. pylori and some of the other bad bugs that are in our bodies. When we don't have a lot of the good ones, then they start to go bad. So then the H. pylori is like, ooh, we can get out of control because the soldiers aren't here kind of keeping us at bay. No different than you start going on a broad spectrum antibiotic and it wipes out all your good biome. And now C. diff is like, woohoo, we're going to go crazy, and you're in the hospital and you can't control what's coming out of your body.
So the name of the game is keeping it in balance. And really, to throw it off balance, would be food poisoning, would be introducing something bad into the system, or it could be wiping out the good stuff, staying on an antibiotic for a really long time. What are some other ways to really upset the balance?
So surgeries, being on like anesthesia or pain meds because it slows motility. I have a lot of people on peptides or like the GLP-1 semi-glutides. You're hearing all about that, Ozempic, Wegovy.
Yes.
That often highlights, I'm like, they've got an infection if they're now constipated, because I'm like, they probably have a biome shift that I didn't know about. So it's interesting when, medications can kind of do it, how we're eating, what we're eating late at night, not having enough enzymes. And we've talked about this in the past, and you understand, we've experienced that ourselves, is like we're not making enough gastric juices. Digestion starts in the brain. If I were to sit here, especially as a chef, like talking about a dish, or you explaining to me about the dish you guys had at the Italian restaurant last night, we would both start to salivate.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we're like, we need to go next door and get some lunch because we're starving, and so really digestion is a process that starts in the brain to trigger your body to create more saliva that hits the belly. Then the belly says, start producing those gastric juices, food's coming in. Well, we're bypassing all of that. How often, and I'll raise my hand, am I standing and eating, or eating on the run, or trying to catch up on my notes for my patients, and, I'm eating and I don't even know what the heck I'm eating. So this food's going in my belly undigested, and then it goes into the small intestine, and it becomes food for the good stuff, which gets located in the wrong spots. That's what SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, can be, is that the good bacteria now is starting to move into other areas. So we want the good bacteria to be where it's supposed to be, and we want the bad stuff to be at bay. And so there's lots of factors that come into that. Eating, grazing all day. Sometimes people who are like, I don't really eat meals, I kind of graze all day. That can contribute to it. Eating when you're really stressed out because you're eating so fast, you're kind of wolfing down your food and not chewing it and digesting that. So there's lots of really good factors that kind of go in, and my job is to sort of help people figure that out. But I think a lot of people don't even know they have a biome shift.
And that's exactly the point I was going to go to next, is how do you know when you have got an imbalance in your microbiome? Like, what are the most common things that you see? Because I know there is a wide range of symptoms.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Is sometimes early satiety, like being really full all the time. Like you drink water and you feel full, you're not hungry. That's what we call early satiety. It could be from acid reflux to upper GI gastric pain. It could be lower gastric pain. It could be bloating, like, oh my gosh, by the end of the day, I look like I'm 6 months pregnant. Yep. It could be constipation, diarrhea, a mix of both. Not going to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom once a week, that's not normal. Going to the bathroom 5 times a day, that's not normal either. And actually, there's a poop scale called the Bristol scale. And really, it goes from like tiny little pellets to like liquid, and we want to be somewhere in the middle, and I call it a banana. So we do have to talk about what's coming in and coming out of your body. So normal would be small pieces, a banana, maybe soft serve ice cream. There's like things that we can tell that need to be shifted a little bit, but generally we're wanting it to be clean, flushed, good, not looking at what you had at lunchtime. Then that's telling me we need enzymes or something else going on, that you're eating something is coming right out of the body. Could be from an infection, could be that you need support. There's a whole host of things that make me wonder what's happening. But that's normal for a lot of people. Even in the family. Oh, this is the family thing. When we eat, we're all fighting for the bathroom. I hear that all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Like they're all dumping when they get home because they're like, oh, this isn't going to be good. They're all fighting for the 3 bathrooms that are in the house. I'm like, that's not good. They probably all have an infection or some sort,
Something's going on.
Something's not right.
I feel like the GI issues, or having GI issues, is probably the most obvious thing that something's wrong. But sometimes it can be headaches or anxiety or depression or brain fog or just not feeling clear or having to nap all the time. I mean, it can be
fatigue,
things that you would not even link back to your gut.
I just got a test back this morning that I think I was pretty floored, because this person doesn't have any GI issues, but he's got an infection. I was like, either he's not connected, he doesn't feel those things because he thinks it's his norm and maybe wasn't really identifying that. But it's really kind of fascinating. I'm like, okay, we're going to dig deep on that to see, because it does trickle into everything else, where it can be joint pain and headaches and nutrient deficiencies, your hair falling out, rashes, skin disorders, neurological stuff, muscle wasting, weight gain. Like a huge chunk of my people are weight gain, but you've sent me people too that are completely underweight from the infections, and they can't sleep at night. They're malnourished almost in a sense. They're sick often. Their immune system is not working efficiently. So, and that's really that biome. Your biome, your 70% of your immune system is in your gut. And we make hormones in our gut too. So I always look at people when they say, hey, you know, I'm chronically sick, or I want a hormone test or a food sensitivity test. I'm like, what's happening with the gut? We got to fix that first, because
Agreed.
will it give us a really good read on that test result? If you're not going to the bathroom, you know, every day, fully eliminating every day, you're reabsorbing all those hormones you're trying to get rid of, the toxins you're trying to get rid of, the bad cholesterol. So often I see high cholesterol with chronically constipated people because they're just recycling that cholesterol. And so it's free floating now. Plus they're not happy. I think most of us would want to eliminate many times versus not eliminating ever.
Right.
It makes you feel horrible. You feel disgusting. You know, it's terrible.
Yeah. So are there certain foods that are beneficial versus really irritating when you have a microbiome imbalance? In other words, are there things you need to really try to avoid and things you need to potentially eat more of?
Yeah. So I'll tell you some big players, because I do such personalized nutrition, so it's really hard. Your body's going to be the best beacon. So when it's super inflamed, or when we can actually like pay attention, we may know. But if your gut is dysbiotic, you may start to respond to everything. Everything you eat is just like, and some of those people are coming in almost in tears, like, I don't even know what to eat anymore. I'm
probably
reacting.
Scared to eat.
Oh yeah. Some of them, like, they feel like they're starting to go into disordered patterns because they're like, I don't even know what to eat. And that's how I felt. I would not eat any carbs. Carbs were like the enemy because my body couldn't digest them. So obviously now I can eat carbs and all the things. But some of the top players I would say is sugar doesn't serve a purpose, period. It is so inflammatory. If you can avoid sugar, plus it feeds candida, it feeds bacteria, it makes their symptoms worse. But the crazy thing is some of those people feel like they're addicted to it because they're like, I feel like when this is around, whether it's a bag of chips or candy or sometimes alcohol, because alcohol will feed the infections too, they feel like they have an addiction to it. And I'm like, look, I don't want to discount your behavior. It might be the infection. It's so interesting how people, you know, they don't crave sugar anymore. They're not craving alcohol or lots of starches because that infection's now mitigated and we're kind of keeping that at bay. A lot of processed stuff, try to eat as little bag box processed crap, because most of that stuff's not that beneficial and has not a lot of nutrients. And American wheat is terrible. So I usually put that at the top of the list. If you're going to have bread or bread products or anything like that, sourdough I prefer because it's easier. It's fermented and digested, so it's easier to eat. Any sprouted grains would be easier on digestion as well. But flours from Italy or pasta from Italy, they do not use glyphosate, and some of the grains that they do have are ancient and they're easier on the body to digest. So those would be the top players. And then there's your common like corn, wheat, gluten, soy, dairy can be really inflammatory because soy is mass produced. And if you have any of those, I would just do organic, non-GMO, just so they have less chemicals in them. And I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of chemicals that are in a lot of our foods too, and they're just super inflammatory.
And once you get balanced, then you can probably have things in moderation and not have these reactions. And
moderation is key, because really with sensitivities, and it gets so confusing. You guys did a podcast on allergies and sensitivities. It can be like 4 days. You could have something on Monday and you may not feel it till Thursday. And then they compound. So I always tell people what you eat, how much and how often matters most. So if you have a little bit of oatmeal on Monday and you don't have it again for another week, probably fine. But if you have it every day and all of a sudden you're like, it's got to be the French fries, but maybe it was the oats you had every morning, and the French fries kind of top that off because it's super inflammatory. That just starts to get more and more, starts to accumulate, so to speak, if that makes sense.
So it's really good to have a diverse food palette.
Yeah. I mean, I like elimination diets. I do use them in practice, but generally if I start someone on a protocol to clean everything out, I'm like, don't worry about diet, because I become hypocritical. I'm like, go eat a cookie. They're like, you told me not to eat this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but it'll make you feel better. Because some of the die-off, we want to offset, those yucky feelings of die-off. When these things die, they kick off all these toxins and they start accumulating in the body. And it's like a Cracker Jack box. When I put people on protocols, I'm like, I don't know.
It's fascinating to me because I've experienced it myself. The die-off is real. I think I need a t-shirt that says die-off is real.
Die-off is legit. It is no joke.
Yeah. It really is.
And some people just don't have much for symptoms. And it doesn't mean that it's not working. It just means that their body's getting rid of some of the toxins, which is great. But sometimes I think a lot of people realize like, oh, yeah, I'm starting to feel better or automatically. Or they're like, I kind of feel these yucky things, but maybe it's working. So in the end, it's just you want people to feel better and live their best life and be able to enjoy lots of food, because if we're doing elimination for a long period of time, you're missing out on all these nutrients and things that are going to really help keep you healthy. And so I generally don't like go on a carnivore diet for 6 months or keto for 6 months. It's not necessarily what should happen.
So I feel like environmentally, we live in the South, we're exposed to mold, we are eating all kinds of different foods, and a lot of people eat sushi, and you're introducing all kinds of things into your system. How is everyone not having a major imbalance? It's like your body's got to find that balance on its own for the most part, right?
Yeah, well, that's its goal, is to be, our brain wants to avoid pain at all costs, because that's just how we're wired, and everything needs to be balanced. So it's always trying to shift and be homeostatic. So we just need homeostasis so that everything is working really well. Usually with the gut biome, unless if it's like a surgery or like mommy makeovers, I can't tell you how many people come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, my gut is a hot mess and I'm supposed to have a flat abs and I don't. I feel really bloated. I'm like, oh, it's probably from the anesthesia and the bag antibiotics that you had for a while, or the tubes you had coming out of your sutures. Like, you gotta be on long antibiotics for that. And then the pain meds. So it's interesting how, it's so different for so many people.
But for the most part, your gut is going to resolve some of these imbalances on its own.
Sometimes. If it's an infection, it won't. It doesn't normally.
And how does it go from being imbalanced to a full-blown infection when it just gets completely out of control?
It's hard to know, because there's so many factors that play into it. It could be what you're eating, how you're eating, when you're eating. It could be an invader. It's more like pathophysiology that I do when I do a health assessment, is to figure out, oh, what's that tipping point? And I'll see there's a viral load maybe. Some of my chronic patients tend to have a lot of viral history, like Epstein-Barr or maybe herpes, and those viruses stay in the body. And I think it keeps your immune system sort of busy. Stress will trigger a lot of those viruses to react. That's why people, when they have herpes, they're like, oh my gosh, I've got a cold sore. And that could be the sign that you're really stressed. Like, you now all of a sudden that virus is shedding. And so I do think that keeps the immune system busy. And then other factors start to come in, and it really, you have to almost look at each person so differently, how they were born, when they were born. I have some people who literally, I'm like, I think you had candida when you were a baby, because they had medications that fought the yeast and they had an overgrowth at birth. And that just throws everything off, and they create biofilms, and yeast takes a lot longer to resolve than bacteria, in my experience, even personally my own experience, because we have it in our bodies. So these things can shift. I think people can be resolved to them, but we always have to put on the radar that it might come back again because of eating habits or lifestyle choices or environmental stuff. It's just one of those things that it's hard to know, like, one thing would do it. I think it's a multitude of things.
So you just have to be in tune with your body. When you don't feel good, don't let that become your new norm.
Sure.
I say that, I feel like, on every podcast, but I just see it over and over again that people are feeling miserable, and they just slowly but surely accept that as their new norm, and they go on about their life. And it's like years and years later.
Yep.
And it gets just worse and worse, and that should not be your new norm.
No, and I feel bad for a lot of my people, because when they do come to me, they've been to multiple doctors or other practitioners who aren't looking at the biome itself.
Right.
They want to scope you. They want to make sure there's no big things, which I think is great. So listen, I think conventional medicine, we need it. We need all the players. I love when people, I'm like, good for you for keep digging, because there's an answer. You shouldn't have to say, well, you're just going to deal with IBS for the next 50 years. Right. Most IBS people have an infection. And so the doctors or the clinicians aren't really looking at the biome and saying, is this shifted? Are we testing? Looking at all those things. And when they come to me, I'm like, you've got an infection that I think was missed. And then when we treat them, they start to get better.
And the doctor says, oh, I see these symptoms. You've got IBS. Here's the medication that you'll take.
And here's more fiber.
And here's more fiber that you'll take.
Yeah.
Which is just exacerbating the entire problem.
And if they do have an infection, the antibiotic is not long enough. But usually the protocols I do, if I'm working with an integrative doctor, some of the ones that we know, they usually say, yes, go see Christiane, do this for a couple weeks on your antibiotic or antifungal, and then I'll follow up with a protocol, and we'll do that for a couple months just to kind of wipe it out, to make sure, because usually you have to go on multiple rounds of the antibiotic. Sometimes insurance doesn't cover them, and they can be really expensive. So are you going to source it from Canada or Israel? I think I heard the last person say they got theirs from, because here it was like $2,000 for a round of antibiotics. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Where we can put them on things that are widely studied against these antibiotics, and they work great.
And it's natural.
It's the herbals, and I have different protocols, and it actually doesn't just work on bacteria. It can work on candida and parasites too. So there's lots of areas that I think aren't checked. But it's really interesting. I would say candida and bacteria overgrowth are often overlooked by most gastros. I don't know if they're not trained or they just, here's a breath test, let me put you on antibiotic, come follow the low FODMAP diet, off you go. Have you ever tried that? It's so hard. Low FODMAP. FODMAPs are specific carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are everywhere. So you've got fruit, and you've got different vegetables like garlic and onions and broccoli and cauliflower. And so people who try it, they're like, it didn't really work, or it was really hard to follow, or I can eat some of those things. They don't bother me. So I just go, don't worry about it. Here, sometimes I'll tell people, follow paleo. Paleo is kind of an easy one because, I got meat, fish, eggs, lots of non-starchy veggies, endless amounts. So broccoli bothers you, avoid it. And then I'll tell people, grains don't eat, and the only starches you can have are sweet potatoes, and you can do berries and citrus, and that's it. So it's very easy for someone, to put those categories versus what's a FODMAP? What's an oligosaccharide? What's a polysaccharide? You know what I mean? It's like, and it is a lot of carbs, different types of carbs that can be problematic, but not everyone. If I could just cherry pick and say, okay, well, if someone says they bother fruit, I'm like, then don't eat fruit. Fruit bothers you, I wouldn't eat it right now. Eventually, we want to get you to eat that, but because it's feeding the bad stuff and it is creating more problems, then just avoid it. But again, it's really hard to know. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So here's another question for you. What is the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic?
So a probiotic are the bacteria itself. So if you buy probiotic, or you get yogurt, has like lactobacillus and those types of things. So you can either take a pill or you can do food. I am always under the school of food first. So if we can get foods that will help your biome grow on its own, much better. Prebiotics are fibers that feed the biome, the gut. So inulin fiber, chicory root fiber, those are considered prebiotics. Sometimes you can buy probiotic pills with prebiotic fibers in there, and postbiotics, which is a whole other thing. Usually when people are like, a doctor or somebody, go get on a probiotic, I just tell people, don't take it every day. Unless if you want antibiotics, I generally don't want people taking a probiotic every day. Sometimes it can make you feel worse. If it does, get off of it. You don't need it. I'd rather you get it through food. So there's foods like resistant starches that I like to use often. These are foods that become food for your gut. Like, for example, potatoes, pasta, rice, oatmeal are all resistant starches. And especially like rice, I have a recipe on my website called coconut rice, and I give all my gut people, I'm like, make a pot of that because it'll help you feel really good. When you cook and cool the coconut rice and reheat it the next day, you can't absorb all the carbohydrates, but they become food for the good bacteria. So they can help really calm things down, make you feel really good, feed the good stuff where it's supposed to. Plantains, bananas, grains and stuff like that can be really helpful for resistant starches.
Interesting. I feel like that was a huge pearl you just gave us.
Yeah.
To not take a probiotic every day.
Unless if you're on antibiotic, then I say go ahead, take it 2-3 hours away from the antibiotic, because you don't want C. diff. And a lot of people don't talk about it, but I've caught many of my people who are on, a very broad spectrum antibiotic or multiple rounds, and I'm like, ooh, you got some signs of C. diff. You should get that checked out.
And tell us exactly what C. diff is in case anyone.
Clostridia difficile. It is a nasty, explosive diarrhea in the hospital situation. It's not good. It's a horrible smelling, terrible, like something died inside your body. It is awful. So C. diff is one of those things that we have. It just gets out of control when it doesn't have any good soldiers around. We've wiped them out with all the antibiotics. So usually on a broad spectrum antibiotic, we'll say eat yogurt. So that lactobacillus would be really good. I would just recommend don't eat yogurt or take a probiotic within the same time as the antibiotic, because you're just going to wipe it out. So, but that's the only time I'm like, take take a probiotic is usually when someone's doing that. I'll have someone, if they want to just help kind of build that, we'll use food first, and then I will supplement and say, just take it once or twice a week.
Yeah.
Akkermansia is like the new one. That's a GLP-1. That's the one that kind of mimics the peptides, all the Wegovy, Ozempic, Mounjaro, in terms of like feeling full. The Akkermansia is really good for that. That'd be the only other one that I would say. You can take that regularly every day, but generally 50 billion and it's got like 10 probiotics, and I'm like, oh, don't take it every day.
Wow.
That's just I think it creates more problems. I'd rather your body, you have this great biome, let's feed it with food, and then supplement after if we need to. But generally, you don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, that is great information.
Thanks.
Because I bet most people take a probiotic every day.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And listen, I always tell people, listen to your body. Your body, we have to empower our people to say, don't go down the rabbit hole, listen to whatever, Joe Schmo talking about what worked for him, because your body is so unique. And when you deal with biome, it's like a fingerprint. It is so complicated, the makeup of it, what's in there, what's not, how you're born, all those things. So your body's telling you these things. You just have to be aware. Get inside of your body. Listen to the signs and symptoms. If things are off, get it fixed. If you're taking probiotics and you feel really good, look to diet maybe to switch that up a little bit. Because over time, I think doing that all the time, I think it's probably not the best thing. But then I throw my hand out. I'm like, does it make you feel good? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, stay on it, but just try not to take it every day.
Yeah.
But I feel like that'll empower us to say, you know what, I know exactly what my body needs. And then we can sort of drown out the noise, because there's too many people out there, even professionals, who are put everyone into a box. And I'm like, you can't. I've done this forever, experienced it myself. And I'm like, I don't know. It's like a Cracker Jack box. I just never know how it's going to evolve and change. And that's just what I tell people, really kind of look at your body. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody is different. Mm-hmm. That's the key.
Your body's so different. Yeah.
Anything else?
And watch your stress. Always. I think people don't realize how stress affects us, and especially women. I feel like we do hold it in the bowels when we're really stressed out. It can make us more constipated and rolls into lack of sleep. And those two players right there, you're always hearing me talk. Every time I talk to you, I'm always like, stress and sleep. Yeah. We've got to find a way to help manage and make it better, because then your body is going to thank you for it. It's like, oh, I can function, and stress, because we have receptor sites everywhere in the body, it really can affect on every level when it's chronic. And let's be honest, the world's crazy right now, and everything's kind of wacky. And then we have our own stressors, work, life, finances, whatever, that if we can make adjustments and changes to that, it's going to be hugely impactful. Because sometimes, even if we fix the biome, if someone's chronically stressed out, it's so inflamed, you're not getting the nutrients that you need, you're not going to the bathroom all the time, or maybe you're going too much, and it just starts to affect every other system. So here's another pearl for you that blew my mind. I've done this for decades, and once I remembered, I got to start teaching people the same thing. I learned from the blood type doctor, Dr. D'Adamo, in my 20s when I was going to see him. He had said, stop drinking. You're drinking way too many liquids at meal times. Even when I take vitamins, I'll put a whole handful and I'll just take a little sip of water and swallow like 10 pills all at once, because you want your digestive enzymes, your gastric juices to be breaking down the food. So I had an anesthesiologist I was coaching, and he would guzzle water because he had no time to eat. He was the patients all morning, and then he had to hydrate and eat, and he knew he had to get his water in. So he would guzzle all this water, and then he would eat, and he felt so sick. He was I felt like food was just coming up all day. So I said, stop drinking. Try to sip on water throughout the day. When I usually eat, unless I'm out to dinner, I never have a cup of water at the table. I just eat my lunch. And so you can just get a little bit of water and slightly sip on it. But this whole notion, I think back in the 80s, was drink lots of water at meal times. It'll fill you up. Yeah, but it dilutes your juices. And then now this food's not being digested properly. And if that gets in the small intestine, it can create problems. So
because you want an acidic stomach, which is leading me to ask you about this rave of drinking alkaline water. How you feel about that?
Yes. Well, I worry more about the kidneys, I feel like. You're going to be able to get electrolytes and some of the other things within food. So I do like electrolyte water. It's great. But no different than the hydrogen water bottles or the alkaline water that everyone's like, drink so much of it. I think it's, I don't know, too much of a good thing is probably not a good thing anyway. So if you sprinkle it in, it's good. But I did kind of go down that rabbit hole myself with alkaline water. My urine was pink. And I'm like, oh no, that's not good. It started to do damage to my kidneys. And it was just after like a week, everything's alkaline. And I'm like, why is my urine pink? I looked it up. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense because you want to be more alkaline. But the way to get more alkaline is to use food, eat more greens, eat more plants. I'm a plant-forward dietitian. I don't think everyone has to be a vegan, but like throw some veggies on there, eat some color. Then you'll be more alkaline naturally. You won't have to worry about your kidneys getting damaged, or your stomach or anything else.
Exactly. To find Christiane, you can go to the Soul Wellness website, www.soulwellness.net, and find her under the Providers tab, or you can go directly to her website at www.themintnutrition.com. And before you go, Christiane, tell everyone about the process to start working with you.
Anyone who wants additional information, they can call me. I do a free consultation. Happy to point them in the right direction. We do offer a health assessment. I always start with a deep dive on someone's history and really kind of looking at that and giving them a pretty in-depth plan on here's my recommendations. We are in network with most insurance carriers, which has been life-changing for a lot of my people. So they're not having to pay cash. It can cover some of the costs of the services, which is really good.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me again. I feel like you've got so much good information to share. So I'm sure you will be back in this chair again. And
I will be here again.
Helping educate the public about their gut.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on another enriching episode of Soul Wellness with Kristen. We hope the insights shared today have resonated with you, inspiring a deeper connection to your own journey towards holistic well-being. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to subscribe, share, and reach out. Your feedback fuels our mission to bring you meaningful content that educates, empowers, and uplifts. Remember, you are a vital part of this community, and together we're creating a ripple effect of positive change.